everyone. We're going to talk a little bit about our wrists today. It seems like one of the most frequent things I hear from people when they're starting yoga is that their wrists hurt and they wonder if there's any advice or anything that they can do. Actually, there's a lot that goes on with our wrists in yoga and any exercise where you're doing plank or floor exercises. So it's a good topic. It's a good thing to talk about and learn some ways that you can protect your wrists and make them stronger. If you think you have carpal tunnel or arthritis or some inflammation that's being caused by an injury, please seek medical advice. What I'm going to say shouldn't replace that, but I can give you some ideas and some tips on ways that you can stretch them out a little bit, make them a little bit stronger, and maybe think about where you're putting your weight when you do your exercises and see if that might help offer some relief too. So we're going to start pretty simple today. We're just going to bring our palms together. Then I want you to bring your elbows slightly up and your palms down. So as you can see, my forearms are in a straight line. I'm going to drop my shoulders back and down so I'm not hunched up like this. And I'm just going to apply a gentle pressure, pressing my hands against each other, just starting to work through the wrist a little bit on the bottom of it, stretching out the bottom. Then we're going to switch to the other direction. So notice my forearms are still in a straight line. My shoulders are still back and down, but I've now brought the tops of my hands together, stretching out the top of the wrist a little bit. Stay here as long as you like. Use your breath to stretch it out. If you have very tight wrists, it might take a little bit longer. Otherwise, just try to hold it for about 3 to 4 breaths. You can do some wrist circles, getting that synovial fluid into that joint area. That often helps. Make sure that you go both ways. So that's just a simple warm-up. You can pull your fingers back if you want to as you press through the palm of your hand. Just a couple different things we can do to warm it up. But more importantly, I think we need to talk about what to do while we're in the pose that can help our wrists. When we get into tabletop, the first thing we want to make sure of is that our wrist, our elbow, and our shoulder are all in line. So if our hands are out in front, which they are for down dog, but in tabletop, we want them close in. So we don't want them out in front and we're collapsing into them. We also don't want them back too far. We want them right underneath our shoulder. Nice alignment here. We want to turn our biceps forward and we want to turn our elbow pits forward. Next, I'm going to spread my pinky and my thumb out as far as I can from each other. And I'm trying to feel the mat underneath all parts of my hand, including the palm. It's easy to just maybe get up on your fingers or get part of your hand or get the outside edge or just the bottom, but we really want to use our hand as a base. So it's very important that we take a moment, spread our fingers out as far as we can, and then make contact with the mat under all of our fingers and under the palm of our hand. If we feel space anywhere, try spreading out that thumb or that little pinky a little bit further, see if you can get everything closer to the mat. We've now turned our elbows and biceps forward. We have a nice big base underneath our hands. Our knees are right under hips. The next thing we want to make sure is that our core is engaged. If our core is collapsed, it puts all the weight into our shoulders and our wrists, and they're having to do all the work. So if we just let our core sag and hang down, our wrists and our shoulders are picking up the brunt of that. So we want to keep our core engaged. We're going to pull our belly button in. We're going to engage our core. We're going to press away from the mat so that we're not collapsing into our shoulders. Now some more intense wrist work starts here in tabletop. You can do it with both hands at once or just one hand. We're going to turn our thumbs away from the midline of the mat as far around as we can. I can get mine to 90 degrees, but you might only be able to get yours to the halfway mark today, and that's totally okay, to the 45. Go as far as you can. Once you're there, again, feel that mat under all of your fingers, your thumb and your pinky, and underneath your entire palm. You can do both hands at once or just one. So I now have both hands with fingers facing towards my knees. I'm really making sure that I connect with the mat underneath my entire hand, that my weight is evenly distributed. I'm pressing away from the mat and I'm keeping my core engaged. Again, I'm not collapsing down because that's going to bring all the weight into my shoulders and my wrists. You can take a few breaths here. Remember to use your breath. Make sure on the exhale that you're really allowing these wrists to release and lengthen. You can stay there as long or as little as you like, and again, do one hand at a time. Next, we're going to do the same thing, but turn our pinky in towards the midline of the mat. You can either do both hands at once or just one. People that use their hands a lot, beauticians, cooks, anyone that uses their hands as their primary focus at their jobs, even computer techs, anybody that's keyboarding, will find that their wrists and their forearms are pretty tight. So you might want to start slowly and work into this. Again, I'm pressing into the mat. This one's a little bit more challenging to feel that entire mat on our palm, but we still want to try for that. We still want to strive for that, just so we're not compensating and only using one part of our hand. Good, stay there for as long as or as little as you like. Now going into plank, let's talk a little bit about our hand placement. I always like to, either in plank or down dog, turn my hands slightly outward. Again, go for that nice wide hand. My pinkies are almost touching or maybe even off the outer edge of my mat. My fingers are spread out wide, my thumb is spread out wide, and I can feel the mat under the palms of my hand. So when I go into plank, I'm pressing away. I've turned my biceps forward, I've turned my elbow pits forward, I'm pressing away and I'm not collapsing. My core is doing its job. If my core collapses, look what happens to my shoulders. Watch that again. All my weight comes forward and into my shoulders. So now there is a ton of pressure on my wrists. So I want to engage my core, pull everything up and back. And actually in doing that, I have less pressure on my wrists. So a strong core is also very essential to protect our wrists. If that's too much, then always come to your knees in these types of poses until you get that core strong enough that it can hold your weight and not put so much pressure on your wrists. So again, use that core, use it to pull your weight up and back and away as you press away from the mat. And then from here, going into down dog, we have the same type of idea. I can still feel the mat under my palms, under all my fingers. I'm pressing my weight up and away through my sits bones, and I'm engaging my core to keep the weight out of my wrists and out of my shoulders. If I slack, my shoulders slump, I collapse into my shoulders, my weight comes forward, my elbows go out, and my wrists are the ones that end up with all the weight. They end up supporting the weight. So 3 things that we talked about today. 1, just loosen up those wrists, do your exercises. 2, go into tabletop, work on that alignment, work on rotating wrists 180 either way. And then 3, strengthen that core. Use that core to really lift that weight up and away from the mat. Don't just rely on your shoulders and your wrists. That's when you get pain. But use the core. If you need to go to your knees until you establish that core strength, then do so. Until next time, namaste.